pop the record on. So, thanks, gentlemen, for joining me. I appreciate you guys always taking the time to jump in. So today, what we're going to talk about, just based on your guys's ask, is a little bit of attentional focus and concentration stuff. And it's funny, as I was kind of thinking about this, whenever you screw up, like as an athlete or as a coach, or even as like a kid, the first thing your teacher tells you or the first thing your coach tells you is, you got to focus, right? You got to focus. Like, everybody's heard that at some point in time. But a lot of people don't truly understand what focus is or what concentration is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of explain sort of how we conceptualize sort of concentration, how we conceptualize focus, and then we'll kind of get into some more specific details. So who in here at some point in time had an old school rotary television that was the dial on the front of the TV and it would go click, 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 click to change the channels? All right, so I'm old, Joe's old, everybody else is young here. So you guys are lucky. You guys are lucky here. But so back in the day, instead of a remote, you actually had to change channels manually. You had to go on the screen of the TV and there was a dial. It would go click, 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 click. So that's kind of how focus works. So that's how concentration works. There are, in sort of parlance, 4 channels that we can attend to. And we can only be on one channel at a time. Now, in order to go from channel to channel, just like you would be sort of channel surfing, you're going to be what they call shifting. And we'll get into more specifics later. But understand that we can only be in one channel at any given time. So whenever we are trying to focus on something, we can only be doing one thing. We can't be in one area and another. So concentration or focus is on 2 separate continuums. There's a continuum for what's termed internal and external, which is pretty self-explanatory. Internal is going to be feelings or experiences within our body or within our mind. External is going to be outside of our body, outside of our mind. And then the other continuum is broad and narrow. So narrow is going to be something very specific. Broad is going to be something a little bit more widespread. So the first channel that you see in concentration or you see in focus is what is termed broad external. So broad external is going to be experiences that are outside of our body, and you're attending to a lot of pieces of information. So thinking about the golf world, this is going to be when you are collecting your data before the shot. So you're looking at the lie, you're looking at the distance, you're looking at the wind, right? You are trying to attend to as many pieces of information that are outside of your body as humanly possible. Perfect. The next channel is going to be narrow external. So again, outside of our body, but instead of focusing on many pieces of information, we're just focused on one piece of information. So the easiest way of thinking about that in a performance context, this is target focused. This is target oriented, right? When you are staring down the flag and you have no other focus, that is a narrow external focal point or focus. Making sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Channel 3, this is going to be broad internal. So now we're moving internally. We're moving into experiences either in our mind or physiologically, and there are going to be many of them. So it may be nervousness, right? When you're nervous before competition, you might feel butterflies, you might feel tension, you might feel heart rate racing, so on and so forth, right? You're attending to multiple pieces of information, but instead of them being outside of your body, you're attending to them inside of your body, or you are aware of them inside of your body. And then the last one, channel 4, this is narrow internal. So this is going to be something within yourself, but it's very specific. A lot of times these are going to be specific thoughts, specific feelings. Okay, so whereas the broad internal is more physiologic experiences, the broad internal is going to often be more cognitively oriented, thought oriented specifically. All right, so why do I kind of walk you through these different channels? Well, if you aren't in the right channel at the right time, it's going to cause serious performance issues. So let's think about two different performers for a second. Let's think about the neurosurgeon. What channel do you think would be optimal for a neurosurgeon to be in during surgery?
Narrow external.
Okay, and why?
Because he has to highly focus on the task at hand, and it's outside of his body.
Yeah, right. What would be the worst channel to be in as a neurosurgeon?
Like broad
Broad
internal.
Yeah.
It could be broad internal. Heck, it could be broad external, right? Imagine your neurosurgeon's in the operating room and his jam comes on and he just starts like dancing to that song because he's like, yeah, this is my song. Yeah, it's funny to think about, but if he's the one doing the surgery on your brain, probably not the most optimal of situations, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now let's think about a race car driver as the other example. What would be an optimal concentration state or focus state for a race car driver?
Broad external,
Why would you say broad external?
because he's got to know, like, there's a lot of stuff going around him. Like, if there's, like, a car in his way or he's got to make a turn, like, he's watching the road ahead of him.
Mhm.
And he's got to know if there's any, like, stuff that's going to hit him or he's going to run into.
Totally, right? Like if you are a high-performance race car driver, you don't really need to think too much about actually driving the car. There may be a little bit, but really your focus is more on external stimuli. Your focus is going to be more on, all right, there's a car ahead of me or there's a bump ahead of me or whatever it might be. I need to be attuned to that. Now, if you are very narrowly focused on, hey, I don't feel comfortable. Think about the first time you ever got behind the wheel of a car and you felt so uncomfortable back there. You were so worried about doing the things correctly. Do I hit the gas right? Do I, put it into gear properly? It messes up all of the external focus, right? You're missing important pieces of information that come across. So it's really important to make sure that you stay in an optimal concentration state. All making sense so far?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the sort of rub. Every single one of us has a comfort channel, right? Think about your own life or think about Netflix, right? There's always a channel that you can throw on that no matter what's on, you're pretty happy, right? It might be ESPN, it might be the Golf Channel, it might be a news station. You throw it on and it can just be background noise for you. That's kind of what goes on here. So when you're in a difficult situation, when you're in a pressure situation specifically, we revert back to what we feel most comfortable with. So for some people, they are going to be people who are really, really internally focused, right? When I get nervous, when I get tense, when I'm in a pressure situation, I'm going to move inside and I'm going to think about how I feel. I feel uncomfortable. I feel nervous. I feel worried. And that's how I'm trying to get through this. Others are going to be very externally focused. They're going to be worried about, all right, what's the next step that I can take? How can I get out of this? But as a result, they may miss more of the small details. So we're going to go around, and I want to hear what channel you think you guys are most comfortable with. When you get into a pressure situation, this could be work, school, golf, where do you go?
I guess I can start. I think I honestly it's both like narrow external and narrow internal. Kind of just dependent on the situation. Because I just kind of like when I'm in golf, if I kind of just think about like just my target and then let kind of everything else like naturally come to me instead of like just remember that, oh, I know how to swing a golf club. I'm just gonna focus on the target and trust everything else, and then that'll all work out. But I think sometimes with like school, it's kind of like narrow internal because I'm having to like think in my head depending on like if I'm writing something, like I'm having to think like a little bit more about what I should be like writing down or how to solve a problem or something like that. But I think both of those are kind of like yeah, both narrow and internal and external. So
Okay. Next. Why don't we do Joe? I'll just kind of call out as I see you guys.
I would say narrow external. So especially like when I get kind of like nervous, like I hone in, but at the same time, it's like it's more like general. And I don't even know if that makes sense, but but that's kind of like how I kind of like see it. Narrow external.
Okay. Narrow external. Ash.
I would say broad external.
Okay.
It's not like I think it's just what I revert back to under pressure, but it's not necessarily what I want to do because
Yeah.
I think under pressure, some of my or just not necessarily like super pressure situation, but just competing. I by nature I consider like everything around me. Like I always read a lot into stuff and I think about a lot of different factors. And then I prefer if I could get into that narrow external, then I'm just focused on kind of one thing right in front of me.
Mhm.
But I would say more external than internal.
Okay. Alex.
Well, I'd probably revert back to more of like a narrow. Well, I think I've kind of tried to make my game around going through certain aspects, right? Like, so I don't think it would be very beneficial to be like narrow internal when, you're trying to make a decision on the golf course. Like, you still have to bring in all these things that are around you, like, like bunkers or whatever it is. Like, you still have to make a decision based on external things. But one thing, like, I kind of revert back to under pressure, like a big key for me would be to be very like narrow external. I think like being decisive and just kind of I guess focusing on a target and hitting it there.
Okay.
That's what
Okay.
I revert back to.
Tavin.
I think for me it really depends on the situation I'm in. Like certain situations I'm more comfortable, but like if I was taking a math test, I would be very like broad internal and external, just like a lot of thoughts running through my head, but then I'm also like looking at everything around me. So I would say even more distracted. But if it's a place I'm more comfortable, like if I'm working out or if I'm like running, I get like very narrow and focused in. So for me, I think it just really depends on the situation I'm in and my comfortability in that situation.
Okay. Okay. So what I want you guys to do, and we're not going to do it right now, but you can kind of do it in your own time, is I want you guys to think about, okay, that is my go-to sort of focal point, or that's my go-to channel. Now, we talked a little bit about, okay, what are some of the negatives there? But I want you guys to think, all right, why is that a strength? But also, why is that a weakness? What we're going to do next is we're going to go through and we're going to do really quick demos of each, because the goal is if we can strengthen each of them, you'll get better at each sort of focus piece. And then you can kind of work together to sort of decipher, okay, how do I improve my weaknesses? How do I keep my strengths better? So first one we're going to start with is we're going to start broad external. So every single one of you guys, I want you guys to close your eyes. And this is going to be quick. I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds. I want you guys to pick out as many different sounds as you can possibly hear in 30 seconds. So the minute you hear a sound, acknowledge it, and then try and hear something different. And the goal is to hear as many pieces of information as you possibly can. Make sense? All right, go.
All of this, all of that, just all of that, and then maybe fix this as well. There's a lot to get done in the studio. We have to do returns for the Oscars. We have to run out in style shoot. We have to return lists. I'm not quite sure why I have to do all of this. Where Rachel from? Rachel is doing a shoot for Marie Claire today. And I'll be Rachel. And he's be doing something that's challenging fashion-wise and not dealing with simple. So they weren't available for most of the day, so it just leaves.
All right, go ahead and open our eyes. So, what were some of the things we heard?
Dog barking.
Dogs barking,
TV,
music.
TV, cars.
I heard like a
People.
spoon like tapping or
Yep.
something like that.
Were we supposed to focus on the whatever was being played, or were we supposed to focus on like?
I heard a lot of shit. I don't know.
I did too. I was like, I didn't plan this. This is just random background noise, so I don't know what that is. But
Okay.
no,
'Cause I
didn't-
could hear, like, I was focusing on like things around me. I could hear like downstairs doors closing.
Yeah.
Like,
I was the same. I was both hearing what was playing on the screen.
Yeah, no, I I think that was Joe, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh shit! I got a loud ass
Oh,
house
I'm
over here.
You weren't doing that on purpose?
No, that was all good though.
You
So,
were doing
but
that on purpose.
but that's the whole idea, right? Is like we were able to kind of jump around to different pieces of information, take the information that we needed, and then move on to the next piece of information, hopefully. So that's broad external. Now,
Hold on, really quick. Let me chime in really quick. So like, I heard a lot of different things, birds, cars, all this, but the TV is going on in my kitchen over there, and it was it was by far kind of like the loudest and like the thing that's going on the most, and like I could hear that bird, and then I would just go back to that TV, and like that's something that I noticed that I do, like. If there's music going on or whatever and I'm trying to focus on something, I always hear the music or whatever is kind of loudest going around, and then whatever I'm trying to focus on is always secondary. And that's a huge challenge for me. And as like when I was in high school and like early college, I really found out that if I wanted to really focus, it needed to be like dead ass silent. Like I would have to go to the library. I wouldn't put earbuds in. I would put ear plugs in, and like that's how I was able to focus. But I just always thought that was something that was super interesting, and I'm sure that that's kind of like what we're talking about right now.
totally. But that's part of why we do this, right? Because you're going to figure out, okay, there are some areas that I'm strong at, there are some areas that I'm weak at. And for you, you may struggle when there's a lot of conflicting pieces of information, trying to hone in on the most important piece of information, right? In this exercise, the most important piece of information is really the next piece of information, right? Because once you have that first piece of information, then I need to go to the next one, and I need to go to the next one, I need to go to the next one. So you being aware of that, it's going to be really important for you when you need to really hone in on multiple pieces of information. You need to try and minimize as many other distractions as possible, because otherwise you're going to keep getting drawn into other sources of conflict, and that will make it hard
Right.
for you to hone in on that one.
Perfect.
All right. So next one. This one's silly, but I like it. So find something small. It could be a spoon. It could be the cap of a pen. It could be a golf tee, an AirPod. I don't really care. Something small. And so this is going to work on narrow external focus. So you're going to have 30 seconds. You're going to focus on nothing but that object. Your mind's going to wander. Your mind is going to be like, after 5 or 10 seconds, hey, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I've already done this before. Like, I get it. Your task is to bring your attention back to what that object is, why it's important, and nothing else. Sound good? Go. All right, you guys can go ahead and open your eyes now. How'd that go?
I'd like to say it went well, but I don't really know how it like should have been, like how like what's right and what's wrong. Like I guess like
Did your mind
I mean,
wander at any point in time?
no, but one thing that I found that actually kind of helped was like I was just kind of like I was just kind of like moving it around, like just like thinking of it in like different ways. I guess it was kind of weird, like, but I don't know.
Cool. Stayed attentive. Good. Anybody else?
I think I did it wrong. I kept my eyes open and I stared at it the whole time.
Yeah, I thought we were supposed to be staring at it.
Stare at it. But did your mind go elsewhere?
Yeah, like my peripheral vision, like I could see like stuff going on the screen. Again, I got the TV going on, but I just like tried to just stay looking at it, and I just like went into like the fine details of it, just like, and it really helped.
Okay. So part of this is an exercise of non-judgment, right? So sometimes when people have a task and maybe they get off track, intrinsically they're like, I've screwed up, I've messed up. And so then that inner critic starts to talk and that inner critic starts to yap. And what does that do? It takes your attention away from the task at hand, right? So it's okay for your mind to wander. That's normal, right? Our brain is naturally wired to kind of check out after a period of time. But we also can control our mind to bring it back to the task at hand. So like Derek said, hey, I moved it around to figure it out. Like Joe said, hey, I'm really trying to hone in specifically to avoid losing that focus. So the biggest thing is making sure that you're not beating yourself up if you lose your focus, because the reality is it's going to happen. I'm more interested in you being able to bring it back to center, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Questions so far?
Nope.
All right. So next one, they're actually quite similar, but we'll kind of start with the internal narrow. You guys are going to plug your ears, close your eyes, and for 30 seconds, you guys are going to try and focus on one specific sound inside your body. It might be your stomach gurgling. It might be your heart beating. It might be the pressure that you feel, your blood pressure. But you're going to focus on one specific feeling inside of your body. All right, ready, go. All right, go ahead and open your eyes, unplug your ears. We kind of see what we're getting at, right? We're trying to see what we're getting at internally on one specific thing, right? That's kind of the idea there. For the external version of that, you would do, the broad version of that, you would do the same thing, but you're going to try and pick up as many sounds as possible or feelings as possible. Sort of the same way that we did it with the birds and the trains and the cars and things like that. I'm not going to do it here because I want to save time for more important things, but you guys kind of get the point, right?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I mentioned earlier the idea of shifting, right? Basically, it's channel surfing. How do I go from one channel to the next efficiently and effectively? So the drill for this, and something that you guys can practice, it's actually pretty fun. So you guys are going to pick a book. It could be a short book. It could be a long book. I don't really care. The only caveat is no pictures. Okay. So every night you're going to read that book for 10 minutes. Okay. After that 10-minute session of reading, you're going to go tell somebody the summary of what you just read. Okay. You're going to do that for a week. Week number 2, same task. You're going to read for 10 minutes, go find somebody, regurgitate the information. Oh, but while you're reading, you're also going to be listening to music. So you're going to be telling the person what it was that you read and the music and songs that you were listening to. Week 3, anybody want to guess what it is?
What do you got, like music, book, and TV or something?
Yep. So you're going to have something on TV, something in a book,
Cool.
something that you're listening to on the radio, music, whatever it might be. The whole idea here is that we as humans cannot functionally multitask. Everybody's like, oh, I'm a great multitasker, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, you're not. If you actually focus specifically on one object at a time, you would be far more efficient. So here, it's being as efficient as possible. I'm working on one thing, going to the next, and you're able to shift between these channels in an efficient and effective manner, or at least you're practicing it that way. But it's a fun way to kind of test yourself. It's a fun way to sort of challenge yourself from that perspective. All right. So as we get close to wrapping up, you guys brought up the idea of kind of the zone or being in a flow state. So from a fundamental perspective, flow or zone is nothing more than when the challenge meets the resources available to it. So in order to get into the zone more frequently, you need to do one of two things. You either need to increase your resources or you need to reduce the demands being placed upon you. Okay? So a lot of times where people get into trouble with the zone is they tell themselves, I have to get into the zone, right? I can't tell you how many people have asked me, well, Doc, like, how do I get into the zone? And I tell them, well, when you're thinking about trying to get into the zone, you've already made it so you really aren't going to be able to get into the zone because you are consciously thinking about it. When we're consciously thinking about something, we start to have this little inner critic on our shoulder who says, yeah, you're not any good. You won't be able to do this. You can't get in there. And that really makes it difficult from a demands perspective, right? We're reducing our resources and increasing the demands. So the best tool that I can give any athlete or performer is, one, don't think about it. The more you think about it, the harder it is to get there. The reality is even the best athletes in the world, they're getting there maybe a quarter of the time at best. That's nice that they can get there, but there are plenty of high performers who don't get there. So don't feel like if I can't get there on a regular basis, that means that I'm not going to be successful, that I can't perform at a high level. The next one is, what can I do to reduce the demands of the task, right? So if I can simplify the task, if I can make the task easier, I'm going to be able to get into that flow state or that zone state far more easily, right? So when I talk about, hey, keep it simple, when I talk about being decisive, when I talk about doing things to make the game easier, that's what we're talking about, right? We're trying to reduce the demands being placed upon you, the performer. And then the last one is kind of what we're doing here. Increase your resources, right? Become a better technician. Become more mentally strong, right? All of those things are resources that are helping you perform at a higher level. There's an old saying that I think it's in the Navy, if I'm not mistaken, but you ultimately revert back to your training. So if you're not pleased with the performance in combat or you're not pleased with the performance in competition, it means that you're not practicing properly. So you need to practice in a higher level to increase that threshold. So for you guys, hey, those are the 3 real big takeaways about getting into the zone, getting into focus. What questions do you have for me on that, the focus piece that we talked about earlier, We have like 6.5 minutes left, but we can always jump in on another one if we have more questions after that. So.
I don't really have a question, but I just kind of have a comment about like what you said about how when you get into the zone, like you very rarely like find yourself like actually like in the zone. And I like looking back on it, like I can maybe think of like 1 or 2 times where I actually like was like I think I was like in the zone. And then like but like the one similarity I feel like that I can take out of both of those is that I didn't think of like I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. It just kind of like happened naturally.
Yep.
And I think like the reason that the pros like or like the really good like golfers like Tiger or someone that can actually get into the zone like a lot more frequently than other people is that he just kind of has practiced like letting it naturally come his whole life, and like he's kind of had like I mean, obviously, like you said, he's had there's a lot of resources that he's had like throughout his career. And I think like talking to all those people has actually helped him do that too. So I feel like even like these sessions will kind of help like all of us like in the future kind of learn how to get into the zone a little better.
Oh yeah. I mean,
so
the simple fact of, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. That's going to go a long way to helping you out, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that inner critic on our shoulder that's telling us, hey, you're not good enough, or you can't do this, or you're never going to get into the zone, that's not helping. And so if we can minimize that as much as possible, that'll go a long way to helping you get there in the future.
yeah.
I have a question. Like a lot of people when they say like they're ready to get in the zone, or like you're before a tournament, you like lots of people like put their earbuds in and like listen to music to like kind of hype them up, or like it helps them get in the zone. But I've like one guy I follow, David Goggins. He basically says like so many people have like they need to listen to their music to get in the zone, but then what happens when you don't have that music? So like, what do you think like? If you're say getting ready for a tournament and you put your earbuds in, you listen to music, but then once you're out there, you don't have that music in your ears, will that like somewhat affect whether you're able to stay in that zone or not?
I don't know that it will impact your ability to stay in the zone. Like for me, I think music is more about getting you kind of in a comfortable state, right? So in a relaxed state or a slightly or physiologically aroused state, you're constantly changing through performance, right? Like you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs physiologically. So I don't know that I fully agree with that. I think to kind of this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's relevant. People who practice with music actually learn less than people who don't practice with music, because it goes back to, if you're having to attend to multiple pieces of information, it's harder for you to actually draw one piece of information in, right? So the people who go and are like, oh, I'm just out here chipping, or I'm out here putting, and I have an earbud in with music, yeah, you might be relaxed because you're listening to music, but you may not actually be learning as much from that moment as you would be if you weren't actually listening to music, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
It's funny you mentioned that, because there's one little like I guess like thing that kind of annoys me is like I like to like listen to music when I like am on the range or something, but I hate it when I can't like hear the sound like my shot makes. So like I don't really do it like as often as I normally would, or like even if I do have music in, it's like really really low volume, because I can't take like just not hearing like the sound of the golf ball when I hit it.
Well, that's intrinsic feedback, right? So there are different types of feedback which tell us that was good, that was bad.
Yeah.
Intrinsic is I feel it, right? I hear it. I know if that was a good shot or a bad shot. Extrinsic feedback or external feedback is what was the performance, what was the result, what was the outcome.
Yeah.
From a feedback perspective, intrinsic feedback far more powerful, far more beneficial to our ability to learn. So yeah, I mean, that's another great example of that. All right, hey guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut this meeting down. Jump back into the new one that I set up in like a minute, and I'll see you guys in just a second, okay?
Yeah, sure.